Oh, your mic, Chairperson.
Okay, we're still going to call the Wyandotte Creek Groundwater Sustainability Agency to order. It's December 16th, 2021. Please join me in salute the flag of our nation. All right, ready? Salute. Pledge. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation,
under God, indivisible,
with liberty and justice for all.
under God. Always. Please call the roll.
Board Member Conley,
Here.
Board Member Smith,
Here.
Board Member Bynum,
Here.
Board Member Daly,
Here.
Board Member Riston.
Aye.
All right. Next up, we have the minutes of the August 26, 21, and the September 23rd, 2021, and November 18th, 2021. Does anybody have any errors or omissions they'd like to point out in those minutes? Any questions? I'll entertain a motion to approve them.
I move we approve both minutes.
Second.
Thank you. I'll just I don't have to do a roll call, just all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We're here, right? Anybody opposed? Okay, passes unanimously. We have an attached financial report, 2021 fiscal year for Wyandotte Creek, GSA as 12/7/21. It's on the consent agenda. Are there any questions about that? Any reason to pull it? Anybody from the audience like to pull it? Oh, I should ask, is there any electronic? Do we get any electronic mail on any of these items?
Mr. Chairperson, I have not received any written communication for this entire meeting.
Okay, good, I don't have to ask again. I'll entertain a motion on the financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Nay. Passes unanimously. Our regular business is the Wyandotte Creek GSA Management Committee will provide information on the final GSP for the Wyandotte Creek subbasin. The board will also consider Resolution 2021-01 to adopt the final GSP. Cami.
All right, is it showing? There. Thank you, Chair Connolly, members of the board, Cami Loser from Butte County. So this is a significant milestone in the SGMA process, and this is also the first step towards SGMA review compliance. So the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act requires that the Wyandotte Creek Subbasin GSP to be submitted within the statutory deadline. Oh, here, let me go to my slide. Sorry about that. Maybe. By the statutory deadline of January 31st, 2022. Today, you're considering the adoption of the GSP through the approval of the resolution to adopt the final groundwater sustainability plan for the Wyandotte Creek groundwater subbasin. Since our last meeting, we, in collaboration with GeoSyntech, who is also here in the room today, have been editing the GSP per review and comments received, as well as responding to the comments received. The public review and comments are in, I have to remember, last night I had Kelly forwarding for me. So the public review and comments can be found in Appendix 1E of the GSP document. And where there you will see a public comments summary memo, public comment tracking table with responses and cross-references to master responses. Just as a reminder, we had a 45-day public comment period and received 3 email letters submitted by members of the public, which are identified as PC1 through PC3, and 3 letters submitted by agencies and organizations, which are identified as A1 through A3. In the summary memo, there are some master responses to key topics. They were kind of themes in the comments received, which included measurable objectives and minimum thresholds, groundwater-dependent ecosystems, and interconnected surface waters. And by preparing master responses, we were able to provide a more comprehensive response that addressed some of the nuances of individual comments. Also in that appendix is the comment tracking table, which includes some shorter responses as well as cross-references to the master responses. And then there were also in the appendices are the letters that were submitted, the letters and emails submitted from the public and agencies. Some of the changes that you'll see in the GSP, which is available online, there's a red line version, so you can see some of the changes that were made. New text is in red underline, deleted text is in red strikeout, and any moved text within the document is in underline, green underline, and green strikeout. And some of the changes included typos, changes to maps and graphics, as well as tables. And then there's also the addition of various appendices, including the one that has the responses to comments. Other additions made to the GSP, we included an acknowledgements page as well as a preface. And the preface, which I hope you'll read, kind of describes the GSP preparation process in the context of the drought. Again, the submittal timeline is January 31st, 2022, and DWR's technical review will be based on the evaluation criteria in the GSP regulations. DWR's review plan reviews the GSPs for compliance with the regulations, which include, one of the first steps is to determine if the plan was submitted by the statutory deadline of January 31st. They will also review the plan to see if it is complete, meaning that it appears to include the information required by SGMA and the GSP regulations, sufficient to warrant a thorough evaluation by the department. They also review the plan to see if it covers the entire subbasin and if the plan is likely to achieve the sustainability goal. So the GSPs so the evaluation process takes about 2 years. So they have about, I think, 70 plans coming in by January 31st. And the process of their review will take about 2 years. And when they review the plan, they will designate it as either approved, incomplete, or inadequate. And if they give it an approved designation, then the GSAs continue to implement their plans and their projects and everything else in their documents, and they submit their annual reports, and they'll have their 5-year update. If the plan is deemed incomplete, the GSAs will have 180 days, essentially 6 months, to revise and resubmit their plan to DWR. And in identifying the plan as being incomplete, DWR will identify some corrective actions. And some of those actions may include defining criteria representing conditions that could lead to an undesirable result. There might be some items that need to be reassessed before their first 5-year assessment, or even expand and describe some of the methodologies for some of the various assessments within the GSP. And that list there comes from some of the reviews that have already come out on the critically overdrafted GSPs that were submitted. So just to know where some of that criteria came from. They may also identify a GSP as being inadequate. And if a plan is identified as inadequate, it gets moved over to the State Water Board for intervention. I would say, so far, of the plans that have been reviewed, some have been approved and the others have been identified as incomplete. I don't think any one has yet been identified as inadequate. DWR reaches out to the GSA when it's incomplete, and they schedule a meeting to go over what they're identifying as incomplete.
Question?
Sure.
I didn't hear at the very beginning, how long did you say that they take to review the plan?
I'll say up to 2 years. So that doesn't mean, so they take 2 years, but that means you can start implementation immediately after it's submitted. You don't have to wait 2 years to start your implementation.
Okay, that just, when I thought that's what I heard you say, and I went, wait, 2 years? I mean, because a lot could change.
Right.
in that 2 year, let's say they take the full 2 years to approve your plan, by the time they get around to approving it, a lot of things could change in your area,
Yeah,
so.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And so
okay.
there, as part of, once we submit it, the next item that is due on April 1st is the annual report. So we're already working towards getting that pulled together with all of the current data.
Right, okay.
And so that will be submitted April 1st. And over the course of the time that they're reviewing it as projects are implemented, information may change. We'll know more from any data gaps. And so even if they were to come back and say your document is incomplete, we might have done some things that would have already addressed
Address
some of those
what their
things.
deficiencies were. Okay, great, thank you.
Okay. So looking ahead, Kelly, are you talking about the schedule after? Okay, so Kelly will be talking about next year's schedule, but looking ahead with regard to the GSP and administration and implementation, we'll be clarifying roles and responsibilities as part of GSP implementation and also pursuing funding opportunities. The Sustainable Groundwater Management Grant Program, being a medium and we're a medium basin, we are able to apply for funding in round 2 of that grant program, which opens to us in about late 2022 or early 2023. So in the meantime, identifying other grants outside of that funding program to perhaps fund some of the projects identified. Obviously, too, some of the member agencies will also be doing some of their own projects as well. We'll also be looking to partner with other local and regional agencies and organizations for project implementation as appropriate, and then also discuss the need for any assessments or fees for administration and project implementation at the GSA level. So at this point, the management committee is recommending that you adopt the final GSP for Wyandotte Creek Groundwater Subbasin, and the resolution also authorizes this management committee to make minor typographical corrections and internal consistency edits to the GSP if needed prior to submittal to DWR. Because as you go through a document, you always find one typo no matter how many times you read it. So with that, if there's any other questions, I will say, obviously Kelly is here, but Christina is also online if there's some technical questions that Kelly and I can't answer.
I'm curious, what about the surrounding ones? And, we interact with them. Are they on the same track as us, behind us, ahead of us?
So Butte Subbasin, the Board of Supervisors, as you know, approved that GSP. That's one of 11 GSAs in the Butte Subbasin that have to adopt that GSP. And then Vina GSP was adopted by the Vina GSA and the Rock Creek Reclamation District GSA last night.
What about south of us?
South of us, I think Yuba, Christina or Kelly might know, there's Yuba County.
Yeah, Yuba actually submitted their plan early. So they're already wrapped up and they've gotten feedback from DWR at this point already on their plan. I'm not sure about Sutter. I know they're to the south of us also. Is that something you're familiar with, Christina?
Yeah, so just one more comment. Can you hear me? Yeah. North Yuba plan was approved. So they, like Kelly said, got feedback from DWR and it's been approved. DWR did provide some comments on things that they need to work on still. So that's really good news though. And then, Sutter is also kind of on a similar track as the rest of North Sac Valley. And I believe they're planning to adopt probably this month or early next year. I'm not sure exactly what their timing is.
I think too with Sutter County, they originally did an alternatives report rather than a GSP, but they came back saying that it wasn't adequate and they had to do a GSP.
Well, my concern is that we can't harm each other, and I think that's where we would be deemed incomplete if we don't match up. So I guess, and then there was some concern by other board members that wasn't done in the light of day, which I don't think anything wrong has happened, but we need to have that discussion, how we are going to
Calusa and they're not adjacent to this one, but adjacent to Vina. They're also moving forward. But I think as part of interbasin coordination, which is another appendix in this document, we'll start looking at collectively how all of the other basins, what their MOs and MTs are, some of their projects and management actions, and start coordinating that effort.
That was the term I couldn't come up with, interbasin coordination. You pulled it out for me, thank you. That's my questions. Any other questions by board members? Well, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So move.
Second?
Oh, any public comment of any sort? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much. Now we'll have a financial, we received a written financial report. And we've received public correspondence from Tasha Levinson. Am I on the right one? No, that's the last one. Oh, here we go. Yuba Water Agency was in the packet. Management Committee update. Here we go. Management Committee update. Kelly.
Actually, we do have another item, Chair Conley. It's a consideration of a letter of support for CalWater.
Yeah, I saw that. I missed it.
Yeah, no problem. And
I
I'll
read it
just,
like twice over here.
I'll just say a few
Nothing against CalWater. Come on.
The California Water Service Company out of Oroville is requesting grant funding through the Urban and Multi-Benefit Drought Program through DWR. And part of that grant application requires a letter of support from the existing GSA in which the project is taking place in. So I invited David Keene from CalWater here today. In your packet, there's a report that they put together that kind of scopes out a little bit more about the well and the treatment area, and some a draft letter for your consideration. But I'll go ahead and turn it over to David too, and he can give us a couple bullet points on it.
Oroville.
It's on.
It's on.
If the light's on, it's off. Right?
Now it's on.
How long did it take you to learn that one, Eric?
So basically what's happened is over the past few years, we've had a significant change in supply. We had a well down by, in southern Oroville on the railroad property, and they did not renew our lease, so that well has since gone. We have 2 wells here right downtown, Station 2 and Station 10. Both of those need treatment. One of them is a good candidate for treatment, which we're currently installing, but that other well is not. It's on a small lot. It's the one with the fence around it and sort of some good landscaping there. Near Montgomery and Feather River Boulevard. And so we pursued a new well site, Station 17, in that same area. And so what this is it's a grant that will help us pay for that to mitigate any impacts to customers. So any money we can get from the state will help us, and as part of the grant package, we need a letter of support. So that's why we're here.
So you're abandoning one well and creating another one to replace it?
One of them, they basically wanted to renew it. They wouldn't let us, the railroad well, which was a good well. And this one down here, it's just too small to put treatment on.
Okay.
The well's okay, but the site is tiny. And then the well we are putting treatment on is right by the skate park.
So I have a question, David. So with that, the new site, do you think it's going to be a little bit better as far as the contaminant issue? I know anytime you have, within the city limit, it starts becoming a problem for contaminants.
We do expect it to have the same issues. We budgeted for treatment. It's close proximity to the other wells. It's PFOS, PFOA, which is a contaminant of emerging concern. So there's no current maximum contaminant level, but we are forecasting that there will be, and so we are budgeting for treatment to go in with this station. So again, more reason to get the grant money as part of this. So,
Questions or comments by any board members? Is there any public comment on this matter?
Well, it's just one thing, I was just looking here.
yeah, we have a well renewal lining project scoped for the station that's getting the treatment. So that's going to hopefully extend the life for another 10, 15 years. But yes, they are old. It's good water supply in that area. So they just keep giving. But they do have contamination issues. So that's the trade-off.
It was just a comment, I just didn't realize that the wells were that old, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. Nope, I'm good.
All right?
I've got a question about the well that's being abandoned or let go. What's the history behind that?
It's not that it's being abandoned. We'll still keep it. It'll be in an active state and it'll be for emergency use only. But since it has that PFAS in it, if we run it, we have to notify the entire system. So it would run, for example, if there was a multiple alarm fire right there and there was low pressure, it would kick on to provide fire for that. I mean, to provide water for that. Otherwise, it will not run. So it has a set point of, I think, 20 PSI to kick on, which we rarely come on to. So it's not that it will be abandoned completely. It was just turned into an inactive or standby well.
Is that a state requirement or state? I know in Palermo, we had a well in Honcut, and the state said the contaminants were too dangerous. You know, it had to be augmented with all kinds of safety features, and so it turned out it was better to get a grant and put in a new well than to continue to deal with it. Is it like similar to that?
It is, except that that state maximum contaminant level is not official yet. So currently, there are notification levels and response levels, which are a different classification of requirement by the state. So once they put out that maximum contaminant level, that MCL, then we will be able to make decisions about the viability of the well. Currently, it's still good in case there's a need for it. It's just that we have to tell people you're being served. It's a carcinogen, so it has long-term impacts. So it would be bad, but not obviously, you know, acute impacts or anything like that.
Okay.
So
I'm curious, where was the well on the railroad property at?
it was all the way down past Fort Wayne on Lincoln, way down to the bottom of our system down there.
And there was no contaminants there?
That was part of it. There was starting to be contaminants, and the
Because
railroad
the
didn't want anything to do with
railroad
it.
burned down and they
Well, I
dumped
think-
diesel on the ground for 50, 100 years.
I think they didn't want any to have to deal with any of that.
I
You know,
got
they
you.
like the money, but once they start getting to water quality, they're like, "Ugh." So.
I was just curious about that. Okay, any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion here.
I'll move that we provide a letter of support.
Second?
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. Passes unanimously. Okay, now we can go to correspondence. It was in the packet, right?
Yes.
Management committee update.
Okay, that's me. I'm gonna start off by saying congratulations now that we have adopted the final GSP. We're gonna talk about next steps, because we still have a lot of work to do. Our immediate next step is going to be uploading all the information from the GSP into DWR's portal. It's a little more complicated than just uploading a PDF. And so we'll be doing that. I'll be taking the lead for all three of the GSPs that are in or partially in Butte County. So we've got to really get a lot of the baseline information for the GSP in there, the PDF of the document itself. But then we've also got to identify, you know, which areas of the plan meet all the specific requirements outlined in the law. And then all the supporting information as well. So all the GIS information, all the figures, the high resolution figures, all the public comments, and then every reference. So not just the reference list, but we actually have to go in, as well as monitoring data. So all of the fall 2021 data and all the data for all of our RMS wells also has to be uploaded specifically. So there's going to be a big haul for that, kind of lined out January to hide away in a cave and not come out until it's done. But at the same time, we're working on that, we're going to be working on the annual report. And so that's due April 1st, but it's also subject to Chapter 33 of the Butte County Code. And so what that means is that, you know, the GSP annual report is also going to serve as the annual groundwater status report for the county. And so backing up from April 1st, what we'll be doing is running that through our technical advisory committee, and that's a TAC of the Water Commission. We've had them in place for many years. It's a 7-member group that really can get into the nitty-gritty and the details and give us some really good technical feedback. So we'll be presenting a draft of the annual report to them in about mid-January, and then pushing that with the recommendations to the Water Commission in March, and then hopefully to the Board of Supervisors in March. And so that way we can get it ready by April 1st. So in the meantime, the Wyandotte Creek Advisory Committee, we're slated to have them meet in March as well, so they'll get a chance to take a look at it. It'll be more of an FYI for general feedback versus, a technical look at it, because they are a stakeholder perspective group. But they'll have a chance to look at that and give any feedback. And then it'll come to the board in April after it's been submitted so that you can take a look at it. The first one's going to be very basic. It's going to meet the requirements that are lined out. And from that point, the board can take a look at it and say, well, this meets the requirements. Is there anything additional that we'd like to see in there in the future reports? But the first one is going to be pretty bare bones at this point, just so we can get it done and meet those deadlines. So the annual report has a number of components to it, including executive summary and map, obviously. And then you've got to actually put in all your elevation data for all those RMS wells, so all your historic groundwater surface elevation data. We'll be producing groundwater elevation contour maps for both spring and fall of 2021. And we'll be looking at providing hydrographs of all of the groundwater elevation data as well. And what you'll see behind that is the water year type. So you can see how that changes in a wet year versus a dry year. And so that's going to be provided as well in the annual report. Also, it includes groundwater extraction for the previous year by water use sector, and also a map of that. In the annual report, we're required to show the surface water supply that's used or available for use for groundwater recharge or in lieu use. And so we'll be providing volumes for that and sources for that as well. And then also your change in overall storage. And so that's groundwater storage on an annual basis and also sort of that cumulative basis. And then also a copy of all of the monitoring data. So it's a pretty involved effort. Christina and I are going to be really punching on that for all three of the subbasins that we work in to get that into basically in front of the Water Commission TAC by mid-January. So we will be hunkering down, getting a lot of work done. And so what we were thinking was that the Wyandotte Creek Advisory Committee would be meeting in March. Like I said, they can look at the annual report and other items. We'll be working on the agenda for that between now and then. And then having the board here meet in April. And so what we could do is sort of a quarterly meeting schedule as what we were proposing, with the advisory committee meeting the month before, and then the board meeting, so March and April, and then June and July, et cetera, et cetera. And at the next April board meeting, there'll be a few things: housekeeping, election of officers, the 2022 calendar, overview of the annual report, and then also looking at the work plan for 2022. So we've got to really look at the GSA's future funding strategy. We've got a lot of work to do in terms of the things that we've outlined in the GSP for implementation. So filling those data gaps and implementing whatever appropriate projects or management actions are in line. So there'll be a lot to do come April. But that's our plan moving forward.
Questions?
Just quick on the advisory committee, I noticed we have a lot of vacancies. Does that impact anything? And recruitment, what's going on with that?
Yeah, it's interesting. It took a while to get a lot of our members there. So at the moment, we've got South Feather Water and Power Rep, Kristen, who's here with us today. David is here. He's served for the Cal Water Rep. That's actually going to be switching to Evan Markley for the next meeting. And then we've got the three agricultural representatives, Nicole Johansson, Derek Cressman, and Darren Williams. Sorry if I mispronounced your names. And so the structure was established in the JPA as, this is what it could be. It doesn't have to be a 7 or 10 member committee necessarily, but they're functioning really well together. There's a lot of good feedback. There's great attendance. The group's working really well together. So, of course, we always are willing and able to accept applications for any of those other open positions, which would include environmental rep, like a business representative, any tribal members that are interested in participating, that's always open, as well as domestic well users. So we've put out a number of notices
Sure.
and articles, and I know you all have also reached out to your constituents to try to get participation, but it's generally hard in the sub-basin.
Right. I was just
Yeah.
curious in the sense of, deficiencies or pushback from the state.
No, I think the group is working
Okay,
really
great.
well together so far.
Very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Does the tribe have to be federally recognized? May know
It
some-
doesn't, no,
Okay.
not to participate. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be, as we call out in our communication engagements plan, they don't necessarily even have to be located within the sub-basin. The understanding that it's a shared resource that, really spans across lines on a map. So we've done a number of efforts to reach out to all three tribes within Butte County. Moortown and Berry Creek have little pieces here in the Wyandotte Creek subbasin. And so I think we'll continue to reach out to them now that the GSP has been adopted. It's sort of a big milestone. Reach out again and see if there's any interest at this point.
Earlier on, you referenced chapter 33.
Yes.
What's the, I didn't get that part.
Oh, sure.
What part of that concerns us?
Sure. So Chapter 33 of the Butte County Code really outlines that our department puts forth a report every year on the groundwater status. It also, there's another big component of it that looks at requiring a permit for anyone who's interested in using surface water for irrigation, and then selling groundwater to outside of the county. So if that was to be something that somebody wanted to do, they'd have to go through the permit process. So most of Chapter 33 outlines that entire permit process, but it also has that component of requiring a report every year. So that's what we've presented before is the annual groundwater status report that I've presented to you guys before.
And how does that affect us?
Well, in the sense that the GSP annual report is also going to serve as the annual report that's due to the county. So instead of doing two separate efforts and duplicating those efforts, we're having this report meet both requirements.
Good. So we'll be aware of what's going on then.
Absolutely.
And no permits ever
Good.
been issued to export groundwater?
That's the concern, so
I know.
thanks.
It hasn't ever happened.
Right.
All right, test well locations, do we need more? Obviously, probably.
We're always interested in having a more robust monitoring network. Our focus has really been on getting this GSP out the door and adopted. But one of the things that we've been looking at in the data gaps section is understanding shallow areas and how those relate to surface waters as well too. So, if there's any sort of pumping that affects our streams, et cetera. So that's something that is going to be in the immediate future that we're going to be taking a look at for implementation as well.
In regards to funding, so this needs to be submitted by the 31st of January. Do we have to wait to hear back from DWR before you start applying for various grants? As soon as we submit that up, our plan, we can start applying? Is that, or the royal we, but?
Yeah. In fact, that could happen today. So I think what we would like to do for the April meeting is come to you guys and say, all right, here's are the slew of opportunities. The Sigma implementation grant itself that we've been talking about, we found out that that's not actually going to be available until fall of 23 or spring of 24. Is that right? Fall of 22. 22 and spring of 23, yeah. So there'll be some time in between when that funding is available and when we've submitted. But there's a number of other sources out there, and so I think in between now and April, we'll compile those and kind of get a good handle on that, as well as some other funding strategies, whether or not that's a 218 process or, you know, an increase in member agency contributions, et cetera. But we'll kind of outline what those options are so that the board can have a good, robust discussion about that.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Anybody here want to speak on something not agendized today? More than welcome to. We can't take action. Seeing no public comment, we're adjourned. Thank you. Yeah,
Speaking of signatures, Jackie, I think I still need to sign the Measure U meeting.
Measure U.
I didn't sign that.